All right, good afternoon. This morning, the Secretary General, who is in Dubai at the COP, spoke to your colleagues. He said that while the conference is scheduled to wrap up tomorrow, there's still large gaps that need to be bridged. Now is the time for maximum ambition and maximum flexibility, he said, urging ministers, urging negotiators to move beyond arbitrary red lines, entrenched positions, and blocking tactics. It is time to seek compromise for solutions without compromising on the science or compromising on the need for the highest ambition, he said. His remarks were shared with you, and today he's also been meeting with various delegations, regional groups, members of civil society. You will have seen yesterday he spoke at the Doha Forum, where he said we need serious efforts to bring global structures up to date, rooted in equality and solidarity based on the UN Charter and international law. He added that the Security Council is paralyzed by geostrategic divisions which undermine its authority and credibility. The Secretary General noted that even though the Council failed to declare a ceasefire on Gaza last week, it is still necessary, and he promised that he would not give up in his efforts. On Gaza, also Martin Griffiths, the Emergency Relief Coordinator, said today at the launch of the Global Humanitarian Overview in Doha that the situation in Gaza is bad and getting worse, while adding that the truce that was achieved last week was of great importance. He said that the efforts by humanitarian workers will be all the more important during the military operations happening in southern Gaza now. By last night, about 100 trucks carrying humanitarian supplies had entered from Egypt into Gaza, the same volume as in most days since the resumption of hostilities on December 1st. This is well below the daily average of about 500 truckloads, including fuel, and that was, of course, humanitarian and commercial, with the vast majority being commercial, that entered every working day prior to 7 October. Over the weekend, a daily average of 150,000 liters of fuel entered from Egypt, up from a daily average of 67,000 liters the previous 3 days. The increased amount are bare minimum needed to prevent the collapse of critical services, including hospitals, ambulances, water and sanitation infrastructure, and shelters for internally displaced people. Additionally, on Sunday, nearly 45 tons of commercial cooking gas also entered from Egypt, the first such delivery since the resumption of hostilities. Multiple health facilities and personnel were attacked across the Gaza Strip over the weekend. They include the Al-Yaman As-Said Hospital and the Awalda Hospital in Jabalia camp. Also, just want to flag in a statement issued yesterday on the International Human Rights Day, resident humanitarian coordinator, UN resident and humanitarian coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territory, Lynn Hastings, stressed that the human rights have been under assault in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory. She said that violations perpetrated on both populations will bring neither peace nor security, as she reiterated a call for a humanitarian ceasefire. Moving north to the Blue Line, the UN interim force in Lebanon, or peacekeeping force there, UNIFIL, said that it's actively working to de-escalate tensions, restore stability, and protect civilians. The peacekeepers there are telling us that there were intense exchanges of fire across the Blue Line over the weekend, and therefore calling again on all concerned to cease hostilities and avoid further escalation. According to the peacekeepers, residential housing was damaged and civilians were reported to have been injured in southern Lebanon over the weekend. There are also reports of Israeli Defense Forces personnel injured in northern Israel during the exchange of fire. On Saturday, UNIFIL reported that a watchtower inside one of its positions in the proximity of Ibel Khame in southern Lebanon was hit by shelling, causing damage to the structure. Fortunately, no peacekeepers were injured. The origin of that shelling is under investigation. Turning to Sudan, I can tell you that the Secretary General is horrified by an attack in the country yesterday on a convoy of the International Committee of the Red Cross, which was trying to evacuate more than 100 civilians from Khartoum to Wad Madani, which is located just south of the capital. The Secretary General extends his sincere condolences to the families of the victims and wishes a swift recovery to those who were injured. The Secretary General stresses that the protection of all civilians is paramount and that humanitarian workers must never be a target. Just to note that the humanitarian convoy, including 3 ICRC vehicles and 3 buses, was due to evacuate the civilians from Khartoum when he came under attack upon entering the evacuation area. And in a video message for the 10th session on the Conference of Parties to the UN Convention Against Corruption, which took place today in Atlanta, Georgia, the Secretary General notes that corruption not only robs resources, but it robs people of hope. Corruption undermines development, subverts social cohesion, and aggravates inequalities, and fuels distrust in institutions. Mr. Guterres called on the parties to use the opportunity to strengthen international cooperation to prevent, detect, and prosecute corruption in partnership with civil society and the private sector. And this morning, the Security Council was briefed by Bintou Keita, the head of our peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. She said that we are at an important turning point in relations between the UN and the DRC, but she added that 9 days to go before presidential elections. This is also an important moment for the country itself. We have shared with you Ms. Keita's remarks, and she will be speaking to you at the Security Council stakeout at the end of consultations. This afternoon at 3 p.m., Council members will reconvene to hold a meeting on threats to international peace and security. The Deputy High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, Adeji Ebo, is expected to brief Council members. And earlier today in Bamako in Mali, our peacekeeping colleagues held a ceremony to mark the conclusion of MINUSMA, the peacekeeping mission in Mali, following our UN peacekeeping mission's 10 years of service to the people of Mali. Speaking at the event, the special representative, the Secretary General, head of the mission, El Gassim Wane, thanked the thousands of peacekeepers, past and present, who have served with courage and commitment. He expressed gratitude for the international support provided throughout the lifespan of the mission, including the many operational partners, as well as member states who contributed to troops and police over the years. While acknowledging the obstacles faced by the mission and its limitation, Mr. Wane highlighted some of its successes, including supporting the 2015 Peace Reconciliation Agreement, ensuring respect for the ceasefire, and also underscored peacekeepers' role in protecting civilians from violent extremist groups throughout the northern part of the country. He also mentioned the mission's work to facilitate the return of state authority in central Mali by rehabilitating infrastructure to provide basic services and livelihoods for communities, as well as support to build the capacity of national security forces. The Undersecretary General for Operational Support, Atul Kare, it was at the ceremony and is currently in Mali, and he thanked the Malian people for their support. He also paid tribute to the 311 peacekeeping personnel who gave their lives in the cause of peace, including 174 of those who died in hostile acts. Meanwhile, MINUSMA has now closed 10 bases, including its Mopti camp, which was transferred to the Malian authorities on Friday. Overall, 10,754 peacekeeping personnel out of 13,871 have now departed Mali, and the remainder will leave by the end of December, except for those involved in the liquidation process, which will begin in 2024 on the first day of that year, January 1st. Quick update across the continent from South Sudan, where the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warns that more than half of the country's population is going hungry. An estimated 1.6 million children are expected to suffer from acute malnutrition through June of next year. OCHA says this year's humanitarian appeal to help 7.4 million people is just half funded, with about $1 billion only received to date. Meanwhile, humanitarians have been forced to halve rations and reduce support due to funding cuts. In a joint statement, the UN Famine Prevention Response Coordinator, Rina Galani, and the acting humanitarian coordinator for South Sudan, Martie-Hélène Vernet, said the world cannot turn a blind eye to the extreme levels of food insecurity and malnutrition we're now seeing in South Sudan. And over the weekend, the head of our Office for West Africa and the Sahel, Leonardo Santos Shimao, concluded a working visit to Abuja in Nigeria. He took part in yesterday's session of the Authority of the Heads of State and Government of ECOWAS. In his remarks, Mr. Shimao stressed the importance of continued dialogue and engagement with transition countries for a return to constitutional order. More information on the interweb. Also this morning, as briefly mentioned, on behalf of 1,900 humanitarian organizations, we released our Global Humanitarian Appeal for 2024, calling for more than $46 billion to help more than 180 million people worldwide with life-saving assistance and protection. Events marking the release of the Global Humanitarian Overview were held in Doha, were held in Geneva and Addis Ababa. The Secretary General sent a pre-recorded video message. He said 2023 saw human suffering on an epic and heartbreaking scale, but he added the women and men of the humanitarian community are staying and delivering in some of the world's most dangerous places. This year, they overcame enormous barriers to reach 128 million people with food, shelter, medicine, sanitation, services, and protection. And he said they did so with a fraction of the support they need, just 1/3 of the $57 billion we had required. This year, the Secretary General said represents the worst funding shortfall for humanitarian operations in years and called for donors to turn the tide. Speaking in Doha, Martin Griffiths called on donors to dig deeper, citing a severe and ominous funding crisis. About 300 million people around the world still need humanitarian assistance protection in 2024 as armed conflicts, the climate emergency, and collapsing economies continue to drive hunger, displacement, and disease. And over the weekend, you saw we issued a statement expressing the Secretary General's alarm at recent developments in Guatemala, where the Public Prosecutor's Office had taken steps to annul the general elections, which had been certified by the Supreme Electoral Tribunal at the end of August. Mr. Guterres reiterates his call for the respect of the will of the Guatemalan voters and for a smooth transition of power next month. He trusts that the results of the elections as certified by the Supreme Electoral Tribunal will be respected. And earlier today in Geneva, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, opened a high-level event commemorating the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. After a moment of silence in honor of the victims of human rights violations all over the world, Mr. Turk said the event was to call to hope and a call to action, a call to overcome polarization at a time of little solidarity and so much divisive, short-sighted vision, and a call to work together with courage and principle and to resolve huge challenges we face, he added. The event continues tomorrow, can be found online. And a programming note, tomorrow at 9 a.m., the Somalia Security Conference will kick off in Conference Room 2. Following the event around 4 p.m., in this very room, the President of the Federal Republic of Somalia, Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, will hold a hybrid press briefing, but he will be here. We don't have money today, but I thought I would still give you a quiz. Today's a very important International Day. If I said to you, Sound of Music, what day do you think it is? Exactly, it's the International Day of Mountains. And I know, but you're lucky I'm not going to sing Climb Every Mountain. Edie, I really, really wanted to. Yeah.
Steph, with both the Secretary General and Martin Griffiths in Doha, can you tell us what they're doing in regard to improving humanitarian aid to Gaza? Are they planning to travel elsewhere in the region, including possibly to Israel?
For the Secretary General, no, there's no further travel plans. He was in Doha on Sunday, and he got to Dubai late Sunday night. So he was just there, got there Saturday night, left Sunday night. Mr. Griffiths, I'm not aware of any travel plans for him, but we will check for you.
Are either of them trying to spur greater humanitarian aid and access?
That's what we're all trying to do, right? That's what Mr. Griffiths is trying to do. Philippe Lazzarini, the head of UNRWA, Cindy McCain, and the head of WFP, and others. We're all pushing in that same direction.
And on a completely different topic, the lawyers for Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny and other human rights activists have expressed concern that nobody knows his whereabouts. He's apparently been taken from the prison he's been in. Does the Secretary General have any concern?
I mean, we've just seen the press reports a few minutes ago. Obviously, we'll be looking into these reports, and I hope his whereabouts can be clarified. Amélie, then Deji.
Thanks, Steph. On Gaza, after the failure of the Security Council on Friday, the General Assembly is taking over tomorrow, probably voting on the kind of the same text that was rejected on Friday, calling for a humanitarian ceasefire. So how does the Secretary General feel? I mean, is it enough to compensate the failure of the Security Council?
The short answer is that different legislative bodies in this organization have different responsibilities on certain issues. The Security Council is at the heart of our work in peace and security. And I think the Secretary General expressed his opinion about what happened very clearly in Doha. The General Assembly, of course, has much broader representation, so I think messages from them are also very important. Deji.
Let me first start with a question with the SG's trip in Doha. Any updates on any negotiations with the hostage release?
No, I mean,
as well?
I think updates are only would become apparent when the hostages are released, and we continue to work and call for their immediate and unconditional release.
We saw the Secretary General's reaction on the draft resolution being vetoed in the Security Council. How much disappointment can you describe for the Secretary General on this veto by one country in the Security Council?
I would just, I'm not going to expand more on what he said, and I encourage you to look at, you look at the video as well. I think his feelings are fairly clear.
Do you think that 13 members of the Security Council ambassadors, they are now in Rafah crossing? Does that compensate what happened on Friday? And what do you think this can make a difference on the situation, the humanitarian situation?
I think every effort can hopefully make a difference, and I hope it's good that people are trying. I would add that the trip by a number of delegation is not one organized by the Secretariat, as far as I gather. But what happens in the Security Council chamber around that horseshoe, decisions taken, that's what matters.
But what does the Secretary General feel that the country that vetoed the draft resolution is not presenting in Rafah border crossing?
It's not for us to, it's not for me to comment where the U.S., I don't know who exactly is on that delegation. It's not for me to provide color commentary on which member states and their diplomats wherever around the world. Celia, then Ms. Salome, then Yvonne, and then Sharife.
Thank you, Steph. This morning I heard, I don't know if it's true, that some of the permanent representatives have been invited to Gaza. Do you know if it's true? And if it's true, who was part of the trip?
I do not speak for...
Invited by an Arab country.
No, I do not speak for any permanent representative. I don't know. What I'm saying, I think my answer to Deji is that the United Nations is not, or the Secretariat is not involved in organizing the travels that we've seen in the media of some delegations to Rafah. So
no, but do you know if it's true?
There are a lot of things that may true. I'm not a fact checker for delegations. Ms. Salome, then Ms. Murray.
One Gaza, one Afghanistan. On Gaza, I didn't hear an update on Kerem Shalom. Last week we were under the impression that was going to be open, that Israel had approved opening Kerem Shalom.
It opened it as an inspection point, not as a transit point. What we want to see is what we would like to see, which would make the work easier in a sense, or less. Easier is probably not the right word, but would make everybody's efforts more efficient is to have Karim Shalom as an actual point of entry into Gaza.
And so that hasn't happened? Have you
It's
given
not
up on it? Or
it's
still
not
a
a point of entry, no.
Right, okay. And on Afghanistan, any comment from, there was an ARIA meeting held at a mission on the situation for women. This all seems very behind closed doors. I don't think there's been a briefing on the assessment on the situation of women
No, I mean, I understand there was an area
Afghanistan.
formula briefing. It's now the Secretary General Special Coordinator, provided the report, is now up to the Security Council to decide what to do next.
Would the Secretary General like to see an open briefing on this to bring the
I
issue
think
to light? I mean,
I
as
think
opposed
the
to behind
more-
closed doors?
I think we have done a lot on bringing this issue to light, and I think the more transparency, the better. But obviously, the council, as always, is the master of its own fate. Sharife. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Yeah. At least I recognize your Gaelic heritage. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Sharif.
No, it's okay.
So yeah, just a couple of questions. Last week you described the invocation of Article 99 as a dramatic constitutional move, but it failed, didn't it? So where does the Secretary General go from here? Are there
think
further
the-
dramatic constitutional moves he could pull?
The chart is pretty clear. So he will continue his efforts. I think the result of the council meeting was very clear for all to see. He will continue to advocate what he's been advocating for.
But the Secretary General would have known that this would have been the outcome. I mean, he's not.
I don't think anyone could predict or think what the outcome of a vote will be. No one knows what the actual numbers are until the end.
All right, and then a comment, please, on COP28, the EU delegation under Eamon Ryan, the Irish minister, suggesting now that they're going to walk away if the draft text is not changed by the end of today. Could the Secretary General comment on where we are with that?
I think the Secretary General commented this morning, right? He laid out his call for flexibility, for maximum ambition, for avoiding red lines, for avoiding blocking tactics, for pushing for the transition, for phasing out of fossil fuels in an equitable manner. I mean, I think his position is staked out. I think we will leave it to you to do the compare and contrast with what the draft that has come out. But I think one could argue that sometimes the Secretary General may not be as clear as you would like him to be on a number of issues. I think on climate and where he wants member states to go, he has been very clear.
One last question before you move on, please. I keep asking you this, but I don't get an answer about the UN investigation into the death of the Irish peacekeeper, Sean Rooney. His anniversary is coming up in a few days. Could I please see the findings of the UN investigation?
As soon as I have something to share with you, I will. Sharife.
Thank you, Steph. The Washington Post reported today that Israel used U.S.-supplied white phosphorus in Lebanon on October 16th, and actually those images were used by Amnesty International to document Israel's use of white phosphorus in Gaza as well. And the U.S. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby also said that they have seen the reports, and certainly we are concerned about that. What is your reaction to these? Thank you.
I don't have any hard information to confirm that. We're obviously very concerned about any use of these types of incendiary munitions, especially in populated areas. But we will see. If I have anything more to share with you on that, I will. Okay, Frank.
I have a question about Lynn Hastings, her visa being canceled by the Israeli ambassador. Does that mean that she cannot travel there past the end of December? And is there any kind of explanation that they have given you
No,
directly?
I mean,
or
her
written to you?
visa, let's be clear, her visa was not renewed, right?
Right.
It wasn't canceled, it was not renewed. We'd asked for it to be renewed. We obviously stated our disappointment very clearly, and I said, I think I went into that last week very clearly. She will be leaving the country in the next few days. We don't, if a visa is expired for any UN official anywhere, then that person leaves. I mean, that's just the way, we operate. But it is very disappointing indeed that someone who has done such great work is not able to continue.
Well, I understand that the Secretary General expressed his support for her, but will there be somebody named as a replacement?
Yeah, I mean, there will be an acting humanitarian coordinator as soon as she no longer fulfills her function, and then someone will succeed her in due time. I don't have my phone with me, so if anybody on the screen wants to ask a question, wave. Okay, Abdelhamid and then Jordan.
Thank you, Steph. One of my questions was asked by Ms. Sharif. So my second question, the SP said recently that Gaza is the graveyard of children. Would he now revise his statement and say that Gaza is
Sorry,
the graveyard
Abdelhamid, if you could just disconnect and reconnect, because I can barely hear you. There's a lot of friction.
Okay.
And okay. Let me go to Jordan, then we'll come back to you. But it's just a problem with your microphone. Okay, Jordan?
I have two questions. One on the team composed by the SG on artificial intelligence. Does anyone of the team have military experience, if you know?
What I know is that their names are fully, their names were made public, their biographies, so you could look for yourself. I don't know, and I'm not sure what you mean by military experience. If people have done military service or have, I just look at their biographies. Your second question.
I just saw what we received from you is the name of their and their title in their national countries, but there is no CVs for them. And what I mean by military experience.
Hold on, Jordan, hold on. Abdelhamid, I need you to mute yourself because it's disturbing everything. Thank you. Go ahead, Jordan. We'll see if we can get you biographies, but just about everything is on the interweb. Yes.
Yeah, I meant by military experience if someone was actually working in the military to be able. So if for example, the United Nations is being asked to help identify or to clarify some videos during time of war, then they will have experience.
No, I mean the nature of the board is an advisory board to come up with a report on the issues related to artificial intelligence. They're not there to provide verification for us in different cases.
Okay, my second question, if I may, is about Ms. Lynn Hastings. If she is the resident coordinator for the state of Palestine, why do you need a visa from the Israelis, not from, for example, the Palestinian state?
Her title is the resident and humanitarian coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territory.
And what that means?
That's what it means.
Okay, so
yes, go ahead.
1 second, Stephen, please just me one just clarification. Can she, for example, work from other countries?
She will not be working remotely. There will be an interim humanitarian coordinator and resident coordinator once she leaves, and then she will be succeeded.
So in case, if because she's in the occupied territory, then the visa has to be issued by the occupying power. That's what you mean, right?
What I mean is what I've said.
But okay.
We'll leave it at that. Abdelhamid, let's give it one more try.
Yes, can you hear me
No,
now?
no.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Let's just, if you could mute yourself, please. Thank you.
Snap, crackle, and pop.
Edie.
Yes, thank you, Steph. Did you get an answer to my query from last week on whether the artificial intelligence panel's report is going just to the Secretary
No, it will
General,
be
or
made-
whether it's going to be made
It'll
public
be
to
made,
us?
it's going to go to the SG, I think, towards the end of December, and then it will be made public mid-January. Deji.
Yes, in the beginning of this conflict, I remember one of the Reuters cameramen was killed in Lebanon. Now, both Reuters and CNN conducted their own investigation suggesting that Israeli military operation actually was responsible for the death of that cameraman.
Yeah, I mean, I understand from the press reports that the Israeli authorities said they're continuing to investigate. I think it is critical that there be a full investigation and there be accountability for the
So now
death
it seems
of one of
the
your
investigation
colleagues.
is finished, isn't it?
That's what I know. We'll see if I can get any more. Okay. Thank you. Oh, just a reminder, Bintu Keita is at the stakeout as soon as you go. So you should go now, is what I'm saying.